Well, I thank all the witnesses for those great opening testimonies. You know, sitting here listening, I'm thinking we could talk about U.S. policy in Cuba, Venezuela, and their energy sector and economic problems, unaccompanied children, upcoming elections in the region, Canada and Keystone Pipeline, Mexico reforms, and the energy sector and other reforms, or the 43 children and their death. We could talk about Argentina and Alberto Niesman. We could talk about Iran and the Iranian threat and activity in the hemisphere, energy in the region, opportunities with the Caribbean, and energy as a whole, TPP and trade in Panama Canal, the successes in Colombia. And those are just the things I wrote down in the last 30 seconds of your statement. There's a lot of different areas we could talk about, and so let's get started. I recognize myself for 5 minutes, and then I'll take it, the ranking member, and then in order. One thing that concerns me and a lot of folks is the visa waiver program and what we see with terrorism acts in Paris and what the visa waiver program may mean going forward to safety and security of the United States. And so, Ms. O'Neill, you talked about a little bit about preclearance, which I think preclearance and visa waiver are two different issues, but they're very similar. 1 year ago this month, Chile was designated as the 38th participant in the visa waiver program, and Brazil and Uruguay have indicated an interest in that program. And so when I think about the Iranian threat in the Western Hemisphere, visa waiver program, and all these things, I would like to ask you to delve into that a little bit more. And in case such as these, do you believe that it will take, what will it take for these countries, Uruguay and Brazil, to make necessary changes that you talked about in your statement in order to adapt the visa waiver program? And what are your thoughts on that, just real quickly, and I'm going to move on.
Thank you. I mean, I think the pre-clearance type program, trusted traveler type programs, of which visa waivers are part, can be a win-win situation. And one, because it allows us to process people faster, but it also allows us to know who is coming and know a lot more about them than in traditional types of visa programs where you show up. And so the electronic, submitting electronic information, having the information well beyond that person travels anywhere near the U.S. borders actually can be quite useful. Also, for countries to participate in these, as we've seen with Mexico and Canada, which have much deeper and much broader types of programs because of the shared geographic borders, but in other countries that participate, they too have a much better sense because of the types of standards they have to reach to participate with us. They too have much more information about who is in their country, who is, should be there, who should not, whether citizens or visitors or the like. So I think in that sense, in trying to make the whole region, the whole hemisphere more secure, in many ways, visa waiver programs can be very helpful because it encourages, if not forces, those countries to come up to some standards in terms of the information that they have about their own people residing in their country and those who might then apply to come and visit us.
Right. Well, thank you for that. And I'll just, for the record, talk about Paraguay, and a lot of the folks that come to Paraguay into that tri-border region on falsified documents and close proximity to Brazil and Uruguay really concerns me. And so thank you for that. I just want to ask Dr. Ellis, did you read the Department of State's report on the Iranian threat in the Western Hemisphere as required by Public Law 112-220?
I've read it. I've read
all 5 pages of it. So you talked a little bit about the Iranian threat. Do you think the State Department did the public law service in what they did? I personally don't think they went far enough in what the law required and the intent. What's your thoughts on that?
Thank you very much. I think it's a wonderful question, sir. To me, the State Department was correct on a technicality, but missed some of the bigger issues. I think certainly under President Rouhani, Iran has lowered its profile in the region. It's unclear whether at a level, at a classified level, whether things such as recruitment of radicals in Iran and Qom and other places in the madrasas continues, or what the Quds forces continue to do in the region, but. Beyond what Iran is diplomatically doing, previously under Ahmadinejad, what concerns me also is a continuing role through Iran and in others of organizations such as Hezbollah, which clearly continue terrorist finance activities, often in combination with terrorist organizations. And even if Iran itself has lowered its profile, I think the activities of Islamic radicals continue to be a significant threat that we need to keep our eye on, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Something I'm going to continue to focus on is the Iranian threat. In the remaining time, I want to talk to Ms. Click about Colombia, the successes that we've seen in Colombia with the partnership with training their helo pilots and the helicopter assistance the U.S. has given, and pushing back the FARC and pushing back the narco trafficking. How can we take that Colombia model and in your opinion, and apply it to maybe other countries in the region? Is there opportunity in Nicaragua, Honduras, and your experience there? How do you see that Colombia model maybe being transported to other areas?
I think the key with Colombia is that we had an actively engaged partner in President Uribe in the time that we were negotiating and working with Plan Colombia. The United States invested, and I use that term deliberately, invested nearly $1 billion in Plan Colombia, and we see a return on the investment. President Uribe, President Santos, they're able to engage with law enforcement as well as coordinating across the military and with civil society as well. There's buy-in.
You mentioned that. Let me ask you, you think the judicial side of it, the civil society and judicial component of enforcement of rule of law, I personally think that's a vital aspect, whether it's Mexico or whether it's Guatemala or whether it's other countries. So
that's entirely correct, sir. And to have that as a partner, rather than just as an imposition from the United States, rather than us wagging our fingers and saying you have to do this, the Colombians actually did it, and they took it on themselves to take back their country. So if we can get that similar type of engagement in Central America with governments there, heck yeah, we can move forward and we can have successes like we have in Colombia.
Are you familiar with what the Colombians are doing to train the law enforcement and judiciary folks from the Latin American countries, whether it's Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua? From what I understand, and I've seen some of it, some of the training. Can you touch base on that?
I think, sir, I'll have to get back to you with a little bit more detail, but the region looks at Colombia as a success. And it's wonderful to then be able to see the region taking care of the region. And that's what Colombia is coming out as a leader and doing.
Right. I'm wanting to highlight successes. Dr. O'Neill, are you familiar with what the Colombians are doing in that regard?
I am familiar with that, and particularly some of the work that they've done in Mexico. And General Naranjo came up and was an advisor to Peña Nieto, who had been the head of the National Police in Colombia before he just went back recently. I think what's interesting when you think about models of Colombia for other places, particularly places like Mexico, where all of us should have real concerns about, they've done many of the incredibly important economic reforms, but they have yet to really institute a democratic rule of law and strengthen it throughout the country. One of the big lessons from Colombia to me, which you just touched on, is that they also, their society chimed in and participated with Uribe. And so Uribe, along with the money that we provided in the help, also instituted a wealth tax, and that money went just for security and did two things. One, it gave them resources to fight the threats that they had, but it was also done in a very open and transparent way. So there was not corruption involved. That money, it didn't go into the black hole of government. And so that also helped Colombia begin to clean up its institutions, which it has done. And so as Mexico or others, as we work with them, there's many things we can do, the Colombians can do as well, but they also need to bring along their society and have people invest in their own country in the public good of democratic rule of law.
Right. Well, thank you so much. My time's up. I'll recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes.